Hello and welcome to another episode of RITE Around the Table. I'm Natasha McDowell, your host, and again we have with us Gareth Stevenson. We're going to be continuing on today's episode, part 2 of additional costs that you could expect when you enter into a contract agreement. So Gareth, what are the 5 other additional costs that we should be looking out for on our copier contracts when we're looking at those?
Number 1, contract overages.
Okay.
2, a name change fee.
Okay.
3, remote support. 4, staples. And 5, service level additional charges.
So Gareth, you mentioned contract overages. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Sure. So when you agree a contract for your copier, there's always a lease and a service aspect, and there's a service contract created with that multifunction device or multifunction printer that you lease, and there's normally a contracted base amount of copies, images, prints, impressions, as some of the verbiage you'll hear people refer to, that are included in your contract.
Okay, so this is talking about like how many copies that I'm able to make each month and how much is black and white and how much of that is going to be color.
Yes, that's correct. So say they had 5,000 mono images, impressions, copies per month, and 1,000 color. They were allowed to use up to that amount, when then anything above that will be at the rate per their service agreement contract for overages for additional images, prints, impressions.
Okay, so hence the name contract overages. Okay, great. And when you say mono, you're referring to black and white copies? Okay, because sometimes people may not realize that that's the same thing, mono or monochrome.
And obviously as well, where you're going to see higher overages is in your color. Like color is always the selling factor for your business. So the more color you print, depending on how many base color images you have included in your contract, the color is always going to be the heavier fee that you're going to see if you print a lot of color within your organization.
Very good, very good. Thank you for telling us about that. So what could I do to avoid having some of these overages that you're talking about, Gareth?
So you could deploy some account codes and tools and management and restrictions in place by simply giving everyone a code or having a department and allocate copies to that department. Or if you didn't do that, you could just simply have some codes in place so you could run a report at the end of every month and track who's printing what department did what, and get an idea of who's costing you the overages and the money inside there. Also, there's a software called PaperCut that can be deployed. It's like a remote print server tool that can create rules-based printing, which can push print jobs to different places that has a better cost per copy on that device. And you can also restrict functionality. You can also see who exactly printed what, when, and how much it costs. So for example, Natasha, if you were in the office and you were printing on recipes.com and you were printing on 11 by 17, I could log on that portal and see that Natasha on the 22nd of October at 4:50 free cost the company $50 because she printed 100 pages on 11 by 17 for her recipes for the week.
So I actually didn't do that, by the way, print those recipes out. That was just an example. So Gareth, you were talking about a name change fee. So explain to us, when would this be a charge that would be applied?
So another great question. So there is an administration fee involved for a name change fee, and typically the name change fee can be involved if a company's been acquired.
Okay, so you're talking about if the business is changing the name.
The business is changing the name of the company, maybe for an acquisition, or maybe a partner has dropped off, or they're maybe adding a partner.
Okay.
And the costs can vary and really depends on the leasing provider. Sometimes it's free, and sometimes it can be up to $100.
So if I needed to change my business name for whatever reason, then I would just need to contact my leasing provider, and then they would be able to provide me with the information of what I needed to do and how much it was going to be, whether it was free or whatever there's charged.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, good deal. Well, that's good to know. So how many times can I make a name change in the course of a year?
That's a great question, and I would advise you to contact your leasing provider and ask for some more of the information, because that really lies with them, because they're the one that charges the fee and handles the account.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you telling us that. Good deal. So Gareth, you were talking about remote support. What exactly does remote support mean?
So remote support is where you maybe have a remote support team within your organization located in an office at your dealership that would handle issues that are specific to maybe like print drivers or scanning issues, and these issues are typically not covered in all copier contracts.
Okay, so like it wouldn't necessarily be something for your IT department would cover?
If you had an IT department, they may fix it, or they may be contacting the provider, or if you don't have an IT department, it may be on the owner or the office manager to try and resolve it.
So Gareth, what happens if I don't have remote support included in my contract?
So, great question. That would typically be on your lease terms and contract where they'd be listed under services where remote support was included. If it's not, there could be a fee listed there that could be up to $150, or it could have an instance limit of 2 per year or 4 per year. And it's a per call basis, so you can either read the terms and conditions of your contract, or if you call up your service provider, they will be able to tell you before, is it included? And obviously I would check that out before you continued.
So you said that there was a fee that's involved, so that could be a one-time fee, or is it like an hourly rate?
Per hour.
Okay, yeah, so you definitely want to make sure you check your contract to find out what those fees are and how they're billed, so that you don't get any unexpected charges on your bill. And
there is some vendors who include it, which is nice for scanning and print driver related issues, which helps some clients out who don't have IT, or lets IT be able to focus on some other things within the organization.
But the basic thing is that you need to know what does your contract cover and not cover. So, all right, good information. Okay. So Gareth, you were talking about charges for staples. So explain to us why there might be an additional charge for that.
So staples are typically not included in your copier contract. It's everything except the staples and paper. And most staple cartridges have maybe 5,000 or 3,000 staples inside a cartridge inside the machine. So, and the cost can vary from $50 to $100 per cartridge, depending on the type of staple application or what you're stapling within your organization, whether it's 1 or 2 staples or it's saddle stitching. It really varies.
Okay, so you need to make sure, if you're somebody that's going to be stapling a lot or doing any kind of additional stitching, that you make sure that those are either covered in your contract, or just be prepared to pay some additional costs when you're using those options.
Yes, and for what I see a lot of the time, most clients, I'd say, don't really have to replace the staple cartridges that often. People who are doing a lot of stapling may have to replace them once a year or 18 months or every couple of years. So it really depends on the application and how many staples you're using to when you would need to replace them.
Okay, that's good. Great. Okay, so Gareth, the last thing that you talked about was service contracts. So you said that there's different types that you can have. So explain to us a little bit more about what those can be.
Yeah, so traditionally we normally see an all-inclusive contract where it's going to include everything except the papers or staples, and sometimes remote support. But outside of that, normally includes parts, labor, toner, so you're completely covered for the length of the lease or contract that you have in place on the device. However, in some instances, I have seen some what I would call classes, untraditional contracts, where it may just be toner included. And you may have to pay for parts and supplies. Or sometimes it's parts and supplies and not drums. So there's some contracts out there like that, and I make sure you read your contract and understand your contract before you execute it and move forward, because you could see some additional charges based on the level of service. So make sure it's an all-inclusive contract, and you shouldn't have too many additional costs.
So if you are concerned about whether your toner is covered, if parts and service are covered, if staples, anything additional, you just need to make sure to check that contract very thoroughly to make sure you completely understand.
Yeah, or ask questions to the account manager who's with you, or the service director within that organization and vendor you choose for your business.
Okay, sounds great. Well, folks, that's all we have for today's episode of RITE Around the Table. But remember, if you ever have a question about anything to do with your copiers or contracts, please be sure to send us a note on our website and ask us. We'd love to answer those questions for you. For today, thanks for being on here with us today, Gareth.
As always, it's a pleasure educating our existing clients and potential newer clients.
And that's all we have. See you guys next time on RITE Around the Table.